This week, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak met the US President Joe Biden, and amongst the various topics they no doubt discussed was Britain's desire to carve out a role for itself on the discussion around artificial intelligence and its control. In recent weeks, we've seen voices raised, including those of some of the pioneers in AI, warning about the potential existential danger to humanity posed by the technology, alongside, of course, with the appreciation of the benefits it also offers. Some of these have been somewhat colourful. Matt Clifford, one of Rishi Sunak's top advisors, warned that AI could kill humans within 2 years. Not all humans, just lots of them. So that's all right then. Mo Gaudat, the ex-chief business officer at Google X, told young people to hold off from having kids. Economic, geopolitical, global warming, climate change, the whole idea of AI, this is a perfect storm. The depth of uncertainty, it has never been more intense. If you really loved your kids, would you really want to expose them to all this? Britain aims to host a summit on AI later this year, an event to which some of the key national players will gather together. Which key players, you might ask? Well, Sunak only said that it would be, quote, like-minded nations, and that he'd had discussions with all of the G7 members, for instance. Some suggested that this was code for an anti-China and anti-Russia alliance. This was denied. A little too quickly, you might conclude, because for all that the warnings about the coming AI apocalypse have been severe, they've also been non-specific about where this threat comes from. Of course, some commentators, brought up on Terminator movies and the like, are worried that the technology will gain sentience and just conclude that it's in its own interest to rise up and destroy us. Which is all very vivid, but as Mark Andreessen wrote recently, this comes from a mistaken process of anthropomorphism. He described it as a, quote, profound category error. And he said this: AI is not a living being that has been primed by millions of years of evolution to participate in the battle for the survival of the fittest, as animals are and as we are. It is math, code, computers, built by people, owned by people, used by people, controlled by people. The idea that it will at some point develop a mind of its own and decide it has motivations that lead it to try to kill us is a superstitious handwave. Which is probably true, and exactly why you have to figure that Rishi Sunak's coalition of the AI nervous, if we can call them that, is exactly an anti-China, anti-Russia alliance, at least anti what those nation states might elect to do with AI to project their power in the world. Because yes, there is no way, I don't think so anyway, for ChatGPT, regardless of the claims or otherwise to its sentience, to destroy humanity. For an AI to have the ability to do that, it has at the very least to be connected to systems that operate in the physical world and can do so with deadly or at least disruptive intent. And that's the point, because nation states are designing exactly such systems, AI battlefield deployments. Probably none of them are going to simply hook up AI to the nuclear weapons controls and leave it to do whatever it likes. But China has expressed the view that AI will become effective on the battlefield when it's able to create a singularity, the ability for events to move more quickly than human players can comprehend or respond to. So arguably, it's a short step from that to the idea that such a system could be the source of cascading unintended consequences. Unintended consequences plus military hardware, that is worth a frisson of concern. But we should still be aware that a lot of people love nothing better than to imagine end-of-the-world scenarios, so some scepticism is merited as well. Most concerns about AI don't revolve around it becoming conscious and deciding to wipe us out. They currently tend to be expressed around enabling vast quantities of misinformation, of hate speech and other phenomena judged to be harmful. Laughably absurd conspiracy theories, it is feared, will be replaced by uber-smart AI conspiracy theories, and nobody will have a clue what's real and what's fake anymore. But mostly this is the same process, just adjusted to be about your society's internal enemies, not its external ones. You worry about what will happen when your political opponents turn the entire electorate to their way of thinking, thanks to deviously clever formulae that only the best AI could devise. Whether this is any more than the age-old desire to censor your opponents lest their argument should prove persuasive, I'm not entirely sure. There certainly are techniques and tools of persuasion that have been developed to a higher level than we might think compatible with free will and democratic processes. We've seen them in action already, and they already fell into some degree of controversy and ill repute in how they were used, for instance, in the pandemic. So the argument for their effectiveness is arguably overblown. But this is the point. AI will have some hugely beneficial applications for sure. It may identify novel medicines we would never have discovered. It may assist in scientific breakthroughs, all of the rest of it. But the big risk, inconveniently attached to a certainty, is that it will make it possible for people to do bad things to each other. Hostile governments, but also organised crime, terrorist groups, maybe eventually even socially maladjusted teenagers in their parents' basements. Now, Rishi Sunak's summit may discuss, I suppose, the proposal that some have made that there should be a moratorium on the development of AI. But the principles of AI are so well known, the skills so widespread, that's just not a hugely realistic proposition. Instead, the question should be, how can you use AI more smartly than the bad guys to predict, to detect and to prevent the sort of things that they would want to do with it? Most of the things someone can do that will genuinely hurt someone else are already illegal, whether AI powered or not. The few that aren't can be made to be so. But you need to join the battle to have more sophisticated technology and more resource in preventing abuse on your side. Yes, there should be rules. The US military's rule that AI should not be making the call when to kill someone, it's a pretty good start. And yes, you probably should not, in the process of doing this, be hooking your AI up to murder bots or giving it the nuclear codes. China is developing AI to monitor and control its population, and that will lead next to mechanisms for projecting its power abroad. That is the threat. And so yes, Rishi Sunak's summit should absolutely be talking about this. Deny all you like that it's anti-China and anti-Russia, but it should be exploring the ways that people may be incentivized to turn the technology to damaging purposes. And that certainly includes those nations who relatively recent history has seen human hackers on their behalf have been observed pushing at the boundaries of our existing systems. The problem that we really have is that it's way more likely that lawmakers will tend towards the European overly cautious approach. There is no new technology they will not seek to hamper the development of in the name of protecting people from harm. And they're right that they should be oversight. Private companies should not be operating in a vacuum, free of values-based decisions. But all too often, it isn't about oversight. It's simply about banning new things that they have no idea how they work for fear that they may have terrible consequences. Now, of course, the UK wants to insert itself into this process because it sees itself as being more positive about the technology than the dreary old EU. Brexit set it apart from that approach, while nevertheless being more cautious and sensible, maybe, than the market-led US. Not only that, but Britain is indeed a world power in AI, ranking third behind the US and China. While some business sectors are exiting the country, AI firms seem instead to be investing. Right now, the British AI sector contributes £3.7 billion to the economy, employing 50,000 people. I suppose you might need to balance against that how many people will be put out of work by AI, but that's one of those unknowables right now. In its policy white paper that it launched just a couple of months ago, titled A Pro-Innovation Approach to AI Regulation, the UK government said that regulators should follow 5 principles to guide their thinking. Very quickly, these were 1. Safety, security and robustness. 2. Appropriate transparency and explainability. Something of a challenge when AI designers often don't understand how their systems actually work themselves. It would be rather good if they did. 3. Fairness. 4. Accountability and governance. 5. Contestability and redress. That last one, so if you're negatively impacted by an AI process, maybe it contains a hidden bias that rules against you, then you can challenge it. And the government framed its ambition to become, quote, an AI superpower. Give whatever credence to that you feel appropriate. Of course, the banners and the bureaucrats don't want a pro-innovation approach. So, for example, the Ada Lovelace Institute criticised the government's contribution, saying that it, quote, could leave harms unaddressed. While those particular pearls are being clutched, others are rather clear about where the action really is. So, for instance, Lord Sedwill, until recently the head of the UK Civil Service, told a Lords Committee on AI weapon systems this week that the government needs to invest heavily in defence AI. And he said this is going to be the future of defence capabilities, and the UK needs to be at the forefront. He said this would not look like a Terminator/Matrix future. AI-enabled weapons would be more akin to those seen in previous counter-insurgency campaigns, where autonomous capabilities supported troops on the ground identifying threats, and so on. So, who's right? The ones telling you to give up hope of having kids in this wild west of AI that faces us, an attitude that never seemed to affect people in the past, during times when invasion and slaughter by foreign tribes was a relatively common experience, or the one saying that it's mostly upside, while we should of course be keeping a careful eye on what the bad guys are up to. Generally, my instinct is that the extremes are mostly peddled by people seeking attention more than they provide insight into real life. Nevertheless, we are moving into something of a new world. Turning away and taking it for granted that nothing bad could ever happen would be an action of significant complacency. It is a choice that commentators make to get worried about AI and the apocalypse more than they get excited about the technology's possible role in identifying cures for disease or for climate change. Or maybe even for, I don't know, robot companions for all the young people made socially incompetent by social media. I mean, right there, that's the dystopia we already seem to be living in. Far more vivid in its awfulness than that provided by the slaughterbots. The answer might be as simple as saying, go right ahead and have those kids. Just for goodness sake, don't give them smartphones. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please share with anyone else you think would also enjoy it. Word of mouth is really important to us. And if you've not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? As the saying goes, that subscribe button won't smash itself.